Hello, and welcome to Catholic Charities of Santa Clara County. Today we're going to go over the agency history, mission, vision, values, and organizational structure. Thank you for joining us as we change lives for good. Our vision. Imagine a valley where every child has the opportunity to learn from cradle to career and lives in a neighborhood free from fear, where families can afford to live in safe and decent housing and eat nutritious food, where enterprising workers can earn enough to make ends meet and save for the future, where immigrants and refugees are welcomed, and where those who are imprisoned, physically and mentally ill, elderly and vulnerable can find healing and hope. At Catholic Charities of Santa Clara County, we work to help achieve this vision of a more just and compassionate community by changing lives for good. Our mission: Catholic Charities of Santa Clara County serves and advocates for families and individuals in need, especially those living in poverty. Rooted in gospel values, we work to create a more just and compassionate community in which people of all cultures and beliefs can participate and prosper. Our mission has three elements: service, advocacy, and convening, or building community. And all of this comes from Catholic Charities USA, the mission to serve those in need, especially those in poverty, to transform our society by advocating for the underlying issues and addressing poverty's causes, and then convening, bringing together people of faith and people of goodwill. And we do this because we're rooted in the gospel. We're rooted in our Catholic faith tradition. Our core values are compassion, service, and justice. And we live these values out through a culture of respect, integrity, teamwork, and excellence. These are all based on the principles of Catholic social teaching. First, the respect for the life and the dignity of the human person. Second, we're called to family, community, and participation. Third, the preferential option for the poor and vulnerable. That means that those who are weakest, those who are struggling, have the first call on our attention, on our resources, and our support. So we choose first those who are poor. Fourth, we recognize that people have rights and responsibilities, not just rights and not just responsibilities, but mutual rights and responsibilities within our society. Fifth, we work towards the common good. It's not all about the individual. Rather, it's what's good for the whole. And we do this by respecting the dignity of work and the rights of workers, while standing in solidarity with those who are struggling, both at home and around the world. And finally, we're called to care for God's creation, that our involvement with those who are poor and vulnerable also includes caring for the entire world, the world of nature. So who are we? Catholic Charities is the social service and social justice arm of the Diocese of San Jose. We're separately incorporated as our own entity, and we serve as the ministry of service and justice for the Church. We are a member of Catholic Charities USA and of Catholic Charities of California. And Catholic Charities USA, in turn, is a member of Caritas Internationalis, the Church's global network of Catholic charities agencies. We focus on disrupting the cycle of poverty, on changing lives for good, with evidence. And we're a multi-service organization, serving all in need, regardless of creed. So why Catholic Charities? Well, from our gospel values, we start with Matthew 25. Whatsoever you do to the least of these, you do unto me. So when I was hungry, you gave me food. When I was thirsty, you gave me drink. When I was naked, you clothed me. When I was sick or imprisoned, you visited me. And when I was a stranger, you welcomed me. That's our call. It's based on the gospel. And we're also referring back to the Good Samaritan and the innkeeper. So when the Samaritan, who was considered a heretic, saw someone in need, beaten by robbers on the side of the road, the Samaritan took that person on his own animal, bound up his wounds, and took him to an inn to be healed, and paid that innkeeper. So we act both as a good Samaritan, caring for those who are wounded on the side of the road, and as the prudent innkeeper, having a place where people can heal, where they can grow, when they can prosper. We put our faith into action. So we serve people not because they're Catholic, but because we're Catholic. But you don't have to be Catholic to be served by Catholic Charities, and you don't have to be Catholic to be hired by Catholic Charities. What you ask of our community, we ask of our employees, is that we follow Catholic social teaching. We follow the values of gospel justice. And following what the Pope said, charity is the soul of justice. We have the commitment to doing what's right and being in right relationship, and to doing it with compassion. And Catholic Charities is the Church's organized response to the needs of the Valley. It's not just one person at a time, it's the entire community working together to care for the needs of the community. So our driving questions have been, what will revolutionize how we care for the poor? How we form community to care for one another? How we help those in poverty get what they need? And how we help improve lives so people can live with dignity. Our goal is to disrupt poverty, and we do that in 3 ways. 1, by strengthening families and communities. 2nd, by creating paths to self-sufficiency. And 3rd, by advocating for justice, focusing on policies that will change the trajectory of people who are living in poverty. So what does the agency look like today? Well, we were incorporated in 1981, but we're serving the Valley since the 1929 at the earliest record we have. We were part of Catholic Charities of San Francisco, and also the Ladies Auxiliary and the Children's Aid Society all came together and created Catholic Charities here in Santa Clara Valley. And then in 1981, when the diocese split off from San Francisco, we were incorporated as Catholic Charities for the Diocese of San Jose, and then eventually called Catholic Charities of Santa Clara County. Today, we have approximately 560 employees, roughly a $51 million operating budget, diverse funding sources, 23 plus programs as of the 2025 fiscal year. Last year, we served 119,000 people in need at 85 plus service sites throughout Santa Clara County with over 1,600 volunteers. We also have Charities Housing Development Corporation as an affiliated entity. They are our housing development arm, building affordable housing and managing that while we provide the services on site. We're also accredited by CARF, the Council on Accreditation for Residential Facilities. So at a high level view, we're serving 119,000 clients with over 1,600 volunteers, over 2,000 donors, over 200 contracts with over 550 some staff at 85 sites, and over 2,000 pieces of IT equipment. So who do we serve? We serve families and communities in poverty, immigrants and refugees, children and youth, older adults, people living with disabilities and mental illness, people involved in the criminal justice system, people affected by hunger and disasters, and people affected by the housing crisis. So how do we organize our services? Our main program divisions include behavioral health services, children and youth and family development, community advocacy and family supports, economic development services, refugee foster care, advocacy and community engagement. We also have Footsteps Pathways to Self-Sufficiency, which is our strategic plan, and then, as I mentioned earlier, Charities Housing Development Corporation. So how do we help our community? Well, we alleviate chronic poverty, we reduce situational poverty, prevent generational poverty, address the social determinants of health by feeding and housing, finding jobs and benefits, counseling and healing, educating and training, organizing, advocating, convening, providing legal support, accompanying, and guiding. So we do this through 3 main strategies: alleviating chronic poverty, those seniors or people with chronic disabilities, or reducing situational poverty, people who are poor because of a crisis or because of immigration status or having been incarcerated or facing eviction or facing a natural disaster. And then preventing generational poverty for children and youth of families living in poverty. So we serve all over Santa Clara County, mostly in San Jose, East San Jose, but also in almost every single town and city within the valley, within the county, including all the way up to Palo Alto and Milpitas and as far south as Gilroy. Our budget is basically 60% government funding and 40% private funding. So our private funding, including roughly 22% of our budget in donations, 4% in fees, leverages our ability to capture federal dollars, state funding, county funds, city funds, as well as funds from school districts and First Five and other government entities. Over the last few years, we've developed a whole new strategic direction, which we call Footsteps, Pathways to Self-Sufficiency. It's Catholic Charities' visionary approach to disrupting poverty through a family-centered community change initiative. The goal is to help families get out of poverty and stay out of poverty, and to do this with evidence. So how do we do this? Well, we start with the families and what their values are. And the families we support through a seamless welcome, so they don't have to keep telling their story over and over again. We do it with trauma-informed care, starting with respect rather than judgment. It's family-centered rather than funder-centered or even individual client. We start with the client, but build services around that client's family and in the neighborhood. So Footsteps is neighborhood-focused, place-based. We use a strategy we call service guidance to walk with the family as they seek help, not just to give them a resource by a phone number, but to stay with them as they're on their journey to self-sufficiency. And we provide integrated services. So when somebody comes in for one resource, it's not just one resource that we provide. We offer multiple services because we know that poverty is not just one type of poverty. It's not solved just by one service. It takes an entire support for the family and the community. And then finally, it's about community change. It's about changing the policies that keep people poor. It's about changing the policies so that we have sufficient resources that are innovative and supportive of whole communities and whole families to help them with economic mobility, with wellness, and the ability to move out of poverty and stay out of poverty. So from the family's perspective, we have a journey, a family's journey out of poverty. We start with the family. They determine their own needs and goals. They then access integrated services seamlessly with the help of a service guide. That may include food, housing, health, education, employment, immigration, legal services, and more, plus warm referrals to other providers. It's community-based. And then they receive ongoing support for their journey with our staff, our volunteers, through service guidance, accompaniment, our technology, community supports, and flexible funds for crises. As they achieve self-sufficiency, they also then become advocates for the community and policies, and they support others on their own journey to self-sufficiency. That way, it's family-centered community change. We organize internally within the agency through 4 specific strategies. One is the neighborhood initiatives that are family-centered with wraparound support and resources within each neighborhood. And those are supported by the agency becoming a world-class learning organization where we work to change the agency's culture and invest in professional development and break the silos that keep resources from being easily accessed by our families. We build on our data, technology, and systems so that we can develop evaluation and research to learn from Footsteps, to understand, are we making a difference? Is this method working? Can we find better methods? What does our research tell us? How do we know we are successful? What evidence do we have for changing lives for good? That's why we need the work on data, technology, systems, research, and evaluation. And finally, all of this needs support from development. We're promoting Footsteps with funders, both public and private, to secure capital investments and sustainable braided funding. So that's our strategy going forward to break that cycle of poverty, to disrupt poverty, to enable families to move on their own on a pathway to self-sufficiency. So our job, according to Pope Francis, is to, above all, care for the poor. Thank you. Welcome to Catholic Charities. Thank you for changing lives for good.